Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Storytime. Okay, so on today's Storytime, we're gonna do a very interesting topic that I have never discussed on my YouTube channel. I don't think I have. Maybe I have. No, I don't. Well, anyways, so basically, for those of you who don't know, when I was a junior in high school, my school had a week in May 2016 where we got a bunch of bomb threats, and none of them were real. They were all just made up by whoever to, leave school early. But what ensued would later affect our fleet in a couple of ways, and today I'm gonna talk to you about it and explain it a little bit. So basically, a little background info. Like I said, it was May 2016. The first 2 days that this happened, we just went outside for maybe an hour, hour and a half. They cleared the building, and then we went back inside and finished the day. So nothing too notable with those days. But on the third day, that was when we actually were moved from the high school to the junior high at the time, and then we ended up getting moved again, but we'll get there. So I was in my math class at the time. It was probably 11, maybe 12 o'clock, and an announcement, came on, and everyone in the room kind of already knew what the announcement was going to be about, so we just kind of stood up and pushed our chairs in because we were yeah, that's nice. So basically, they're we need to evacuate the building. So we're evacuating the building. We're standing outside like we did the last 2 days. But what changes on this day is the fact that buses start arriving. So probably 30 minutes into being outside, buses start pulling into the lot because they're going to take us from this school to the junior high to process us to send us home. So basically, they allowed kids who could drive to the junior high, and then everybody else rode on a bus. I remember seeing 21 pull up, 45 pull up, and then I distinctively remember 95. And you better believe I was sitting there educating everybody around me on those buses as they were passing by. So I ended up getting on 11, which was our 1997 Bluebird International. It's since been replaced by a C2. I remember talking to a teacher who was sitting across the seat from me about the late low asset number, which was above the driver's area, and 11's asset number is 942-187. I was explaining to him what it meant and how it identified the buses in 1997. Of course, me in that kind of situation, that's exactly what I would do. So once we got to the junior high, they offloaded us from the buses, sent us into the auditorium of the junior high school, and we just kind of sat there, and then I don't know how long it was because I don't remember. Somebody made a threat at the junior high. So that sent it into chaos. I will never forget hearing one of the junior high principals basically yelling at us to go outside and get on a bus. Because, again, they're taking this as if it was serious. Because, every time something like that happens, it needs to be taken as if it was serious because you don't know. So, I went outside. I saw one of my friends. We were talking about how crazy this was, and they had all the buses lined up ready to go because they pretty much hadn't moved them since we got there. So I just kind of found 11 again and got right back on it. And little did I know, 50 was right next to 11. I took pictures of it. I will put them in. So this is one of two photos I took from the inside of 11. You can see I'm on the driver's side of 11, and you can see 50's passenger side there. And if I would have known 50 was there, I would have gotten on 50, but I got on 11. So basically, they get everybody on a bus, and I think at this point they send people who drove their home because there's no point of them going to where we went next. Because the whole point of us being moved the second time was to a racetrack. There used to be a racetrack for horse racing in Lebanon. They knocked it down a few years back, but basically they moved us there, and the whole point of being there was to get you to your assigned route bus. And this is when it gets into confusion and craziness. But before I get to that, as we were leaving the high school, or as we were leaving the junior high, a TC2000 was coming down the other way, and I later found out it was a random Springboro Community Schools TC2000 just driving by. But I, for some reason, thought it was our old 67. I was like, wait, why are they bringing 67 out? It's out of service. But that's just something I kind of remember. So we get to this field, and they've already gotten half of the fleet over there lined up ready to go. Like, they literally just had buses parked over there. Like, they had all the lift buses in a row. They had buses ready to get people out of there if they needed to. So I left 11 because it wasn't my route bus, because the whole point, like I said, was to find your route bus. I was kind of hoping I would stumble across my own bus while I was walking in and just get on it then, but I didn't. And the thing is 36 was having transmission issues at this time, so we didn't actually have it. We had 14. And so I couldn't find 14 to begin with, so I ended up having to go into the building that we were at, and that's when it went crazy. This building, I don't know how many of us were in there, but there were a lot of kids in there, ranging from the high school and the junior high. So basically, it became an issue because everybody was trying to get people to their buses, but like all of the buses were not what they were. So like you'd have bus 5. It wasn't actually Route 5. It was bus whatever. So like you wouldn't have bus 5 being bus 5. Bus 5 would be like bus 8. You know, so it was like a lot of confusion going on. And they didn't have time to get the magnet numbers to put them over the actual bus number so people could see what bus it was. So this leads to us getting route changers, which I will explain that once we get to it. But basically, I was probably there for half an hour or so. They were just going through the buses, getting people to their buses. Then they finally yelled, "Bus 14 for bus 36!" And I was like, oh, that's me. And I think there was maybe 3 or 4 other kids from my bus that were there too. And I just remember us like running out and like seeing our driver outside of 14 and like giving her a group hug, because to be honest, the whole day was kind of stressful. And like you didn't know if these threats were real or not, so like you thought you were in danger. So it was definitely the best feeling to be on that bus and get ready to go. And I remember the director of transportation at the time was walking around making sure people got their bus, and I put my window down and said something along the lines of, "What a great day." I don't remember what exactly I said, but I said something, and you know, she said something back, but there was that. And so after that, we just kind of went home. You know, I took photos of 14 when it was outside my house. I'll have to put them in the video. So this is a shot I took before we left the staging area from inside of 14. And then here's the photo of 14 outside of my house right after it dropped me off. But that day I did take a few different photos of buses. So now we're going to just kind of talk about like how this affected our fleet. The 2 big things here are cameras and route changers. Every single bus in the fleet, with the exception of some of the older buses like the Crown by Carpenters, got 3 cameras. So you have a camera at the top of the front roof cap, you have a camera over the driver, and then you have a camera probably about halfway down the bus. So that way you have views of the entire bus. Now this really has nothing to do with bomb threats, but it was something that ended up happening after the fact. Because at the time, like before that, all of our buses, except for some, like 66 didn't have one, had little camera boxes in them that weren't actually hooked up. So it was more of a, like, we're watching you, but not really kind of thing. And only a handful of buses had actual active cameras, like 95 was one. The whole point, they had put 95 on bus 12's route at the time because it had cameras, and they needed cameras because that bus was kind of rowdy. And I think 79 had its cameras hooked up. But anyways, all the buses got 3 cameras. I'll put in pictures just to show you what they look like on the buses. So here you can see the front camera that's on the front bulkhead. The next photo is of the secondary camera that's about right behind the driver. On some buses it's right above them, it just varies on the bus. And then you can kind of see down there the midship or kind of further down camera. And route changers were probably the biggest actual change that came into it, because every bus got one, all of them. And I remember my first day of my senior year when because I had already known they all had them because I was at the garage during the summer and whatever, but like they were first day already working. They had buses that weren't, they had to have their numbers on the route changer because buses were running for other buses and stuff like that. So it's definitely a help. The only thing I don't like about a route changer is that it puts holes in the side of the bus, and I kind of hate that for 50, but the whole premise of a route changer, in my opinion, I happen to like it, and if I was to take over Lebanon, I would probably still keep going with route changers. But anyways, that's pretty much how we ended up with route changers and cameras. Our bird's going crazy outside, as you can probably hear them. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I haven't done a story time in a while. I don't know if this was really any good, but I thought, hey, I will tell the story of the bomb threats that I went through and why our buses have route changers and cameras now. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think, and I will try to do a few more story times in the near future. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.